Okay, welcome to this month's song breakdown, and this time we're going to break down the song In Our Sacred Skin. Now, if you've watched one of these things before, you'll realise that the way I do it is I break it into two halves, and the first half of the video is all about the song lyrics and perhaps themes behind it, and then the second half will go into the actual evolution of how the song first started and how it got to the point of the song that you recognise. Okay, so without further ado, let's move on to the lyrics and themes. So the lyrics and themes of this song, In Our Sacred Skin, well, it's obviously off the album The Ties That Bind, and a lot of the other songs on that album you will have noticed I deal with sort of a lot of relationships that I've experienced in my life and my sort of the way I've sort of dealt with them and the effect they've had on my life. And I guess this song is still about relationships, but it's in a broader sense than about specific things. And rather than, as some of the other songs are about, slightly not depressing, but they're about like things that have happened in my life that I've had to deal with, and they in effect are catharsis from those things. This song is, I guess, slightly more positive, and in general, to sum it up very simply, this song is about love, and it's about the positive effect and the sometimes overwhelming effect that love can have on our lives, and how it can be such an earthly, primal, kind of forceful thing in our lives, and how it can be like the basis from which we can build up from. If we're loved and we feel loved, how we can build up from there, and how we can, you know, pretty much do anything we want to, really. So it's quite a positive song in a way, and it's about just being loved and loving someone. So yeah, let's move on to the song evolution. So this is the song evolution part of it, and this is the bit where we break it down into the way the song has evolved right from the very start. Now, I went back on my phone like I usually do, and I found some phone recordings, if you believe it, from 2015. That was the first time I recorded something for In Our Sacred Skin, and I will play you a small sample of the very first thing that I ever recorded. It's very chill. So you can probably tell that's recognisable from the start of the song, and I don't know if some of you guys realise, but actually there are almost two intros to this song on the album. One of the intros is actually connected to the end of Persona Non Grata, and if you don't actually listen to all of Persona Non Grata, and if you skip it, then you will actually miss one of the intros to In Our Sacred Skin and only catch the second one. So that's a little tip for you when you're listening to the album. Listen to the whole thing all the way through. But yeah, that is a very early sort of development of the song, and then I kind of sort of worked on that a little bit in 2016, a little bit in 2017, and kind of started to hone it a little bit more, but didn't do any major work. The next time I did some major work was, I think, probably in 2018, when I actually took the song to work with Phil. I usually go around and sit in his living room, and we jam through stuff just on guitars, especially if we think a song is going to be a bit more complex, and I definitely had the feeling that this one might be, and I wasn't wrong. And so this is before we even approached Raj to do any drums to it. And obviously the very early version you just heard was quite chill, and it was quite sort of like acousticy, obviously, and then we started to work on it, like kind of making it a bit more chordy, I guess, and Phil putting some lead parts over the top of it. So I'll play you a little bit of that now. So the observant amongst you will have noticed that melody seems a bit familiar. And obviously this was working on some of the basic chords, but this actually ended up being something that we used in the middle eight of the song, not at the beginning of the song at all. And the chords didn't sound anything like that were behind it. They're actually very sparse, and it's more all about the drum rhythm, because there's quite some Latin rhythms going on, but the actual melody is very similar to that melody there. So that's an interesting thing, where it has actually moved from maybe the start of the song to the middle eight of the song. And still relatively chill, even though the chords are getting a bit more up. But the next sort of evolution of the song happened, where we keep sort of upping it, and we keep making it sort of trying to see if we can make it any louder, any more bombastic kind of thing. And I think the next version, which I'm going to play for you, another phone recording of me and Phil, was where we started to think about the idea of it being heavier, but we still wanted to keep some of that blues element to it. So I'm playing it slightly sort of more aggressively, and Phil is doing some of the more melody, which again you will start to recognise from the actual final version, and putting a little bit more sort of guitar whittle, as we call it, and a little bit more guitar lead in it. And yeah, so I'll play a bit of that for you now. So yeah, that's a bit crazier than the stuff before, but you kind of get the idea of how the song is starting to evolve, and it's definitely getting sort of closer to what you're used to hearing. And then obviously the next stage is to take it to Raj and play around with some stuff. And actually, interestingly, when we took it to Raj, in some ways, although we had been evolving it into a heavier sense, me and Phil, we still, when we originally went back to, or first should I say went to Raj, we still had this idea that it might be chill, at least at the start. And so some of the early rehearsal recordings of it actually, it's very sort of chilled out still, the intro of it. And actually there's a couple of little guitar melodies in it that actually ended up disappearing. So this rehearsal recording is the only version where you can hear Phil doing certain bits of lead that actually ended up not in the original. So yeah, this is interesting. I'll play a little bit of that. So it's sort of familiar in places, but also kind of still very chill compared to the final song that happens. And then obviously we then, with Raj as well, started to up things and try and make it a little bit sort of heavier and sort of bigger sounding and all that. And that's when we started to get into the much heavier version that you're used to hearing. And actually sort of around this time we were sort of doing more gigging and stuff like that, and actually we started to do what we sometimes used to do back then when we were touring a lot more, is we road tested it and actually managed to find a bit of slightly grainy but nevertheless live footage of us playing it. I think it was Dorset Doomsday, and yeah, it kind of gives you an idea of the next sort of stage of the evolution, so I'll play a bit of that for you. And also I'd like to say thanks to Susie from Satland, because she was actually the one that filmed it, and you can hear her sort of screaming enthusiastically at the end of that, so that's cool. So yeah, that one is obviously, that sounds pretty much like the version on the record, so that was where we really sort of got to the point where it had evolved to its final stage. And yeah, so that's the entire evolution of In Our Sacred Skin. Hope you've enjoyed seeing all the little stages of it. I really enjoyed doing this. I really enjoyed breaking it down. I hope you guys too. And it's good just to go back, because sometimes you never think about where a song came from. It's good just to go back and see it, really. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so hope you enjoyed this, and tell your friends about our Patreon, and we will see you next month. Bye.